we go. And so we are going live now, and it should just be on a couple second delay. It says we're live, so I'm going to start to talk. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for our day 3 lunch panel of the Lemonade Conference, brought to you by Fenzi Dog Sports Academy and the IAABC Foundation. For those of you tuning in, if you'd like to apply for CEUs for this talk, you can access that quiz at the lemonadeconference.com/CEU, and we will stick that link in the chat box in just a minute. Our topic today is the future of R+ training, and I have Denise Fenzi, Kamal Fernandez, and Dante Camacho here with me to discuss that topic for roughly the next hour. If we have a bit of time towards the end, we'll open things up to attendee questions, but I have a feeling these guys have a lot to say. So hi all, if you just kind of take a minute to introduce yourselves, share a little about your background, plug your conference talk if you'd like. Denise, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'm Denise Fenzi. I've been training for about 40 years. I started FDSA, Fenzi Dog Sports Academy. I am a crossover trainer. So I would say I was a fairly compulsive trainer for some odd years, maybe 10. And then I was what you might call today a balanced trainer for maybe 10. There was no day I just changed my ways. And for the past, 20-ish years, I've been certainly on the more force-free side. And my talk was precision healing, and it was a workshop. It was a lot of fun. People had a chance to go try it out. So for those of you who have not purchased conference tickets, you still can if you are interested in that topic.
Awesome. Kamal?
Yeah, my name is Kamal Fernandez. I am a professional dog trainer and sports dog coach is my official title, based in the sunny, I use the term sunny loosely. It's not like Brazil or California, but it's grey and dreary. But we call that the British sun. I've been dog training for 30 years, which is ironic because I'm only in my mid-20s, but I don't know how that number works out. Yes, I partake in a lot of dog sports, and I would call myself a reinforcement-based dog trainer, meaning that my choice is always to use reinforcement to train my dogs. I was similar path to Denise. I think that was the trajectory of most of us in this industry that have been training dogs for more than 20 years, I would say. That I started off like everybody else, check chain, walking around a hall, walking in a square and hoping to God the dog came with me. And if it didn't, I just took its head off, to be blunt. And that was how I entered into dog training. And I soon found there was better, more efficient ways to train dogs with better results that gave me a better relationship. So yeah, thank you for asking me to come along.
Excited to have you here. Dante, you want to do your intro?
Yeah. So my name is Dante Camacho. I am a professional dog trainer from São Paulo, Brazil. I've been training dogs for about 25 years. And I actually started training dogs more. I was actually quite lucky because at about that time, that's when clicker training and the idea of positive training actually, first came down here, like people started hearing about it. So that's, I was first introduced to that kind of training. Still a lot of luring, and there was, slip leads and stuff like that, but never like a choke chain or a prong collar or anything like that. So I never actually learned how to use these things. So from the very early in my career, I started doing dog sports. And so I've competed in a bunch of different sports, from freestyle to agility to obedience to rally to dog diving to like a bunch of stuff. And yeah, I do consider myself a positive trainer, if we can say that. And I've been teaching people here in Brazil, and I do a lot of online teaching and coaching, and I'm working on building actually teaching more people to become dog trainers more than actually dog owners today. So that's what my thing is these days.
So I love that I have the 3 of you in particular here to talk about this, because you're all in different parts of the world. So to start us out, maybe you can each just kind of share a little on your perspective on where positive training kind of is in the part of the world where you live. Who wants to go first? I can pick somebody.
Go and pick. We're all going to be sitting.
I can go.
Go on, okay.
Positive training has grown a lot, has evolved a lot. As I mentioned, like 20 years ago, people had never heard of anything like that, or like they would laugh at you for even, considering using treats or a clicker. Like it were like, anyways, there was a lot of prejudice. And nowadays it's actually, people actually expect, like dog owners in general, they understand, or they at least have heard of the idea of positive training or using rewards and using treats. So that for me is a huge step, because that goes beyond the dog trainers realm, is actually the actual people. They actually know that this exists now. I think there's still a long ways to go, because people know it exists, but they don't really know what it is. So there's a lot of people that don't do actual positive training, but sell the idea as if they were, like, oh yeah, I'll use a pinch or an e-collar, and then give your dog a treat as well. And that becomes positive training. But I would say that as far as numbers, it has like changed dramatically. And we are nowadays probably not as far ahead as in North America or in Britain, but I would say that, and also because of social media, positive training has taken, like a much bigger part of dog training in this country than just a couple of decades ago. I would say we're in the good path. It's just, I think a matter of evolving, just like everyone. There's, we need more professionalism and more education, but the idea, it's much more in everyone's head. So I'm actually quite happy about it and excited about that.
Denise, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mean, I have so many thoughts. The first is that the United States is a really big country. And so we need to be a little careful about that, because what I see on the West Coast might be radically different than what you see in the South or the North or the East. We're talking, thousands of miles, and so many different ways of thinking about dogs and raising them in this country. So that's something right there. What I can talk about is what I see where I live and when I'm out and about. And so here are the things I've seen. When I was competing, when I first started out, so 30 to 40 years ago, the idea of using treats was heresy because your dog had to work because they loved you. I would say that's fairly far off the scale now. At this point, as Dante pointed out, even people who use tools, power tools, I call them, usually also use food or toys. Not always, of course. And I think a lot of it trickles down from the competition world. So whatever's happening in the competition world tends over time to fall down to all of dog training. So I think that's a factor that's in play. The other thing I find is that how we think about parenting human children also kind of dribbles down. So the whole spare the rod, spoil the child thing, I think is generally on the downswing in a big way in this country, and has been for a while. But so I'm 53. So when I look at how I was raised with my parents, we didn't really talk about having relationships with our parents. Mostly we tried to figure out how to get around them to the best of our abilities. And they tried to keep an eye on us or put the neighbors to spy on us or whatever it is they did. But you didn't have a relationship. You had the parent and the child, and their job was to basically keep you obedient, even without using spanking or such. My children are raised very differently, and the idea of relationship and cooperation and being more gentle and listening and children having a voice is a very different world. And what I find is that's going to just bleed right on down to our child rearing. And so then that becomes more and more sort of a factor of how we do things, because all of these things play together and then slowly drift their way down. We were talking before, my dog is coughing. We were talking before about what I see when I walk down the street. Huge uptick in harnesses in the last 10 years, huge uptick. I would actually say it is the most common walking thing I now see with the average person out with their dog. And it's a very peaceful walk. Like when I look out at the dogs, they all seem to be getting it and walking nicely. I don't see as many, so many head harnesses. I do see prong collars for sure. And more amazingly, I see people side by side, one with a prong, one with a harness, and they seem to be okay with that relationship. Like two people can be friends. And even though they do these very different things, which seems kind of mind-boggling for dog trainers, because when was the last time you saw a dog trainer on the left with their dog on a harness and a dog trainer on the right with their dog on a prong? Like, unless they were beating each other, you don't normally see them so close to each other. that's what I think I see right now in terms of evolution. I don't know who's got more of the market share. I really don't. I always wonder. I don't think we've ever done a survey to find out, but that's kind of what I see around me.
So in the UK, I would say that reinforcement-based training, force-free, positive, whatever you want to call us now, is definitely more prominent in the pet world than aversive/compulsive. In the sports world, I'd say there's a similar trend, and I'd say the use of extreme aversive pinch collars, electric collars, is definitely the minority. It is there, I can't say it isn't. It is there in both industries, the domestic market and the sports market. Sports, it's more bite-related sports that people will use those. I think that's a cultural thing. And I say mostly in pet training and the majority of sports, it's reinforcement-based methodology. But if my axe to grind on that specifically is that in itself, there's a spectrum from bad reinforcement-based dog training to good and efficient and ones that actually gets results. I'd say there's a very, very different a very wide spectrum for that. And I'd say that needs something, following on this conversation, that needs to be definitely, we need to be better at, because they're always going to hit you with the lowest hanging branch, and if your least successful version of that methodology is the one that you're going to be judged on, we need to up our game, really. So therefore there's always that argument of, well, look at Joe Smith using his clicker, his dog still wants to eat people and run off, and if that's the benchmark of your whereas there's people that are incredibly successful sports dog competitors that are incredibly brilliant domestic pet dog trainers that use reinforcement based, force-free, positive, whatever we are now called. I lose track now. Whatever that is, I think that, but I think the interesting thing about it's very much a cultural thing. I think Britain versus Brazil versus America, you're going to get a different slant on things slightly. England, our thing is we're a nation of animal lovers. That's what we profess to be, good at whatever that is. So I think that the prevalence of electric collars and pinch collars has never really been a thing. It would be very unusual to see a dog over your local park with a pinch collar, and even more so with an electric collar. I'd say it's quite uncommon as a general, just a general rule of thumb.
Okay. So you're all kind of influential people within your space, but I thought it might be useful to kind of talk through this, starting with kind of how your own journeys have evolved, kind of from where you started. Yeah. You've all kind of come a long way. So maybe kind of talk about that a little bit next. Sorry, the puppy's decided he would like to contribute. Anybody want to jump in to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk on this point. It's one that I've literally just got off a conversation we're talking about, and that I'd say my journey is not dissimilar to a lot of people that have been training dogs for the time period that I have, in that 30 plus years ago, the use of compulsion and I'd say balanced dog training, aversives, aversives was very much the theme, and the similar that Denise said about child rearing. And I think that's great that she mentioned those points. I think we've had that conversation privately about the parallels. But to note the parallels between child rearing and dog training, that was how we train dogs. It was the ethos, the culture, the mindset about how dogs were reared. They should do as they're told because that's how the cookie crumbles, and they should do it because they love you. And if they're lucky, they might get a bonio on Thursday, but that's it. But I think that definitely has changed. My own personal experience was that was what I was initially taught. And as Dante said, it's interesting as his timeline, that probably around the timeline when Dante came into dog training, and he's absolutely right, there was a couple of really prominent people within our industry that went, hey, there is a different alternative way. I'd say Ian Dunbar was somebody that really led the light for me. Not only was he was the thing that Ian had was that he was on television, he was prominent, and he had attention, he had a platform. So in days before social media, he was the person that you saw on television that was training, that had a series about training dogs using reinforcement-based methodologies. So so from that point, from my own personal journey, was, again, it was a bit like you explored this realm of dog training like behind closed doors, so to speak. Like, in our social circles, you were a balanced dog trainer and you gave that dog a collar pop and you made him do it if that's what, if you asked him to do it. But secretly back at home, I was doing like, looking into clicker training and looking at stuff that Bob Bailey did and Ian did, and people that were just starting to, be more vocal about the use of positive training. I know Patty Russo in the Straits, she was like being very vocal about, what could be done. So I think there was definitely a trend, which I was like, do you know what, this appeals to me as not only as a dog trainer, but as a person and the relationship I want to have with my dogs. And that was the catalyst. And my own personal journey was that I had studied psychology. So I knew about, operant conditioning, classical conditioning, Skinner, etc., Pavlov, etc. But I just didn't make that connection up until that it was becoming more people being vocal that, hey, you can train dogs with this stuff as well, So for me, it was that epiphany. And then it was having it took a little bit of, I'm going to say courage. That sounds a bit, I don't know, it took bucking against the trend to go, I'm going to try this stuff, and, a lot of my peers were like, definitely, and mentors were very like anti, and I was like, you know what, if I mess up and I fail doing it, then ça la vie, at least I've tried, which was how I stepped into this realm. And the first dog that I went, right, I'm going to clicker train, I was a crossover dog, and I gave it a little bit of initial start, and I think, like so many, I went, oh, this damn clicker doesn't work, and chucked it in the bin and thought that's a load of rubbish, and reverted back. And it wasn't because of the methodology, it was my understanding of the methodology and the application. So then, then going, right, being somewhat of a pig-headed person, I was like, right, I'm determined, I'm going to work through this struggle. And my subsequent dog, I was absolutely right, I'm going to clicker train this dog. If it kills me, I will do it, and if I fail doing it, I'm going to make that commitment. And yeah, the rest, as I say, is history. And that was, oh god, like 20 plus years ago. And I'd say my personal feeling is that certainly in sports, I think it's now been so well, it's so well evidenced or shown that people can compete at high level sport and be successful. In most of the disciplines now. I think bite work is probably the last beacon that hasn't quite been conquered 150%. I'd say all the others, it's very, I could name you easily half a dozen people that have been successful in obedience, agility, flyball, scent work, tracking, all that, using reinforcement-based methodologies. So I'd say it's definitely, there's been a change, and I think it's for the better, personally.
Your story reflects mine in a lot of ways. So something I think about a lot, I was in the process of switching over before social media was a thing. So yes, there was the internet, but it was kind of all new. So you learn mostly from books. And I remember Ian Dunbar, clearly his socialization, his puppy classes, the whole series puppy training actually started where I lived. So that was a big, I was very aware and dismissive of it because I was still in my place. And so I remember I was hanging out with people, and Ken Ramirez gave a talk, this was some time ago, about distraction training. How do you teach a positively trained dog? And I remembered listening and thinking, that would take a lifetime. I'm not going to do that. And having conversations with others about these things. So there was an element of disparaging the information. But the thing that's different now is I didn't necessarily put myself out publicly with an opinion about all of these many things. And what that means is that then, because I didn't get, what do you call that? Attacked by everybody and their mother about how I was a terrible human being, I didn't lock in to my space. Because if you and I had a private conversation and I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, it's not so terrible if it was just you and me having that conversation, because a year from now over a beer, I can say, I don't know, I'm thinking about it. I don't know. What do you think? which is very different than if I've said it on social media,
Yeah.
dug in my heels and
Yeah.
said, dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. Because now what happens is, it's one thing to eat crow to you. It's another thing to eat crow to a wide audience. I honestly do not think I would have switched over to positive reinforcement training in today's society if I came in as a balanced trainer. I just think there's too much hardness, too much poor behavior on both sides of this, that I think, frankly, is the number one thing stopping the progression of positive reinforcement-based training in this country from becoming much more widespread. Is it's just
so
the
tribal.
constant. It's
so
terrible.
Yeah.
And it does force people into their, like, people say to me, well, you know, I'm educating. I said, but who are you educating? The only people who are willing to listen to you speak exactly like you because you're so disparaging of everyone else. So you're educating people who know what you know, in which case it's not education, it's in-group signaling. You're only educating if you are able to reach people who think differently, and you can only reach people who think differently if you stop disparaging their choices, their behaviors. But I really do think I would not have changed in today's world, which is truly unfortunate. Where I want to see this go personally, the big thing that holds me to my method when I want to pick up a dog and say, stop doing that. The thing that holds me there is the relationship I have with my dogs today is so radically different than the relationship I had with my dogs. I can take my 6-month-old puppy out to open space, and I know there's no question in my mind he is going to come when I call him, and he's going to come so fast, no dog can come faster, turn harder, and show up next to me. I can't get enough of the fact that we have this incredible cooperative relationship, and I have a role too. There's things I have to do. I have to make that worth his while. I have to put in the time. I have to take him to the right places, but I could never give that up. And so when people talk about, well, you know, why are you reinforcement based? And people talk about how horrible these other methods are. I'm like, I'm not positive because I'm against those things. I'm positive because I'm for what I get, and what I get is amazing. And I would love to see that be our selling point going forward. I live in harmony with another species. That's incredible. They live in my house. That's incredible. And we get along because we all give a little, we all take a little. I think that's the way I wish, like, people say, what do you tell new people who get a dog? I say, you have another species living in your house. That's amazing. How are you going to make this work for all the parties? Like, to spend just a few minutes having that conversation with a new dog owner, a new family. I think that conversation could go really far to setting a tone going forward of how can we make this work for everyone? And rather than, oh, don't put a choke chain on your, we spend so much energy warning people about the other. No, talk about what's amazing. Focus there. That's what I'd like to see.
Dante, I know they kind of went a little far from the journey piece, but that's okay.
Yeah, as far as journey, I think what happened to me was that when I started, as I mentioned, I was presented to positive reinforcement early in my career, and I got involved in sports. Luckily, I didn't have the chance to learn from anyone else about sports. I had to actually look for information by myself. There were, like, where I lived, there was no opportunities, there were no schools, like, it was all far away. So it was perfect because then I had to make up everything based on the information that I had. I was like, yeah, you get a clicker, you have to, there's this thing called shaping. You can get the dog to do you have to make this dog do all these equipment. And I wasn't, like, really experienced about, dogs themselves, but it made me have to think through. And I very early on got results, I saw, and that is what probably just made me stick to it, because you're reinforced, you just feel things work, the dog's happy, you're happy, and then you actually see that you're actually doing things that other people are doing. Your stuff is working. I actually thought everybody did the same, but then I realized that people were not doing what I was doing, and they were, having issues as well. But that helped me, stay within the idea of positive reinforcement. It just made sense. Every time I saw someone doing something else, why would you do that if you can just do things this other way? But as far as dog training in general, especially away from sports, because sports is a very small world. I was training dogs in general, like just pet dogs, and trying to help people with the small knowledge that I had. But the way people see dogs here, the culture that we have, it's changing, right? We don't have a dog culture like, let's say, the British have. They've most of the dogs we know, are related to like someone that made them up somewhere up there. So what happens is people actually, the relationship they have with their dogs here is of not expecting much from dogs. Dogs are dogs. They're just dogs. They're there. We're not expecting them to be super obedient because we don't take them everywhere with us. We don't travel with them. They're just our dogs. They're there. They're in the house. They're in the yard. They're whatever. So in that way, I was also limited in understanding what could be reached, what we could be doing with dogs. Apart from sports, I didn't really know that dogs could do, like, even different sports. I didn't really know, or living with a dog inside your house and dogs understanding all this communication and learning all these things. So when I started traveling to compete, I started noticing like people from all these different countries with all these dogs and how the dogs behave and how they are all together, and people, related to them in a different way. And the way that they related was much closer to the way my girlfriend related to our dogs, and she was not a trainer, right? So when I moved, and then I moved to a different culture, and then I saw how people actually lived with dogs and what dogs could do and all the different crazy things that people were doing with dogs, like apart from all the different sports. And probably that's probably why I wanted to do so many things, because I wanted to experience all these different things they were doing, but also the way they were living with their dogs, how they were much it's not about being part of the family. It's about really what a dog can be. As I mentioned, our culture was still too much about not expecting much. So the idea today, and like as evolving, has been really, to me, it obviously changed the way my relationship with my dogs and what I expect from them, and not expect from it, but I know they can be. But my idea today is much more not about teaching dogs to do stuff, but teaching people about dogs. And then what dogs can do, people will just realize because they know more about them. So I guess that is the route that my career has taken, is more about showing, and like the work that I do through training is about showing people how you could have a great relationship and how dogs can understand things and you can understand about them as well. So, but the easiest way I find to do that is through training, because people don't see your relationship in your house with your dog. They see the dog being trained, and that's what catches their eye. And then it's the little window where you actually get them to understand and to believe that that is possible for them too, and many other things are possible. So that's, I think.
So there's an interesting, sorry to interrupt you, sorry. Just on that point, it's really interesting, isn't it, that how I suppose this is obvious when you think about it, the cultural influences or how they dictate the relationship that we have with our dogs. And as Denise said, the two parallels I'd say was child rearing and dog ownership. And I'd say that if we're talking, if the conversation is where is positive training going to go? So my thinking on this is the way in which people, like, for example, culture and the way people talk and address people and is very different now than what it was, say, 30, 40 years ago. So, if you look at imagery, so for example, just in a ditty, I went, into town recently and I looked at images around that, just taking note of marketing. And there's a marketing of a interracial couple, which would obviously resonate with me because my daughter is mixed race. So I was like, my God, that's amazing. There's an image there of an interracial relationship. There was a homosexual image of a gay couple, and there was one of an old woman, a plus size model, a person that had was wheelchair bound. All of this was marketing imagery to sell a product that had nothing to do with those. And you think, the society, what we're trying to say within our society is to treat people differently, to accept everybody for what they are, and so forth and so forth. The same has happened in dog training, isn't it? In that we're trying to say we want to treat our dogs differently, with more kindness, to train them more ethically. But I suppose it's the same parallels in that I think the sticking point, and Denise has been really candid about this, is I think we all now, it's very prevalent and common. How do I teach my dog to sit with a cookie in my hand? Everybody, I think, was very confident about that. The bit that isn't openly discussed is, what do you do when it goes badly? What do you do when, like, the proverbials hit the fan in those situations? Because that goes against what we were saying about the shift in cultural thinking, certainly in the UK, of being kind. Well, I know how to be kind to my dog, but what do I do if my dog's really pissing me off? What do I do if my dog's going to bite my kid? What do I do if my dog's, going to be a liability to society? And I love how Denise phrases it, that the dog has a right, you as the owner have a right, society has a right, and it's working through that. And for me, that's why I think that the conversation about reinforcement-based methodologies needs to go. It's the same with society. Have we become so politically correct that I can't, how do I call Denise a woman, or what's her label? Is it a she? How does she want? So it's gone to the extreme end of the spectrum, as opposed to going, it's Denise, it's Dante, whatever, really, and I think we need to find a place of going, I might misstep and call Denise she, and she might not want that label. I apologize. It doesn't mean I should be stoned in the street. It was said from a place of educate me and can we move forward, as opposed to, like Denise was saying, becoming tribal. And I think there's a parallel there with dog training, in that certainly for positive training, as I said earlier, the stick that which we're always beaten with is, well, that positive stuff is great, but what are you going to do if the dog goes off and wants to kill a sheep or whatever? That's the example that's always used as the extreme end of the example. And until we can be candid and saying, well, in that situation, I'd put my dog on a lead. That's the miracle cure. And I'd put it on a lead. And if I had to put a lead, a harness, and pick it up and drag it out the field and rugby tackle it from killing the sheep, I'm going to do that, because I'm a human being living my best, doing the best job I can in the situation that I'm in. And then I'll figure out how to dog train it afterwards. But, but if Denise shows that she says to her puppy as he don't bite me, oh my God, it's like, well, is Denise force free? Is she balanced? Is she secretly behind the door, giving him hit him with a big stick? Until we have that transparency of saying, listen, sometimes I do things and I'm really grateful that I went, oh, for God's sake, I shouldn't have shouted. I'm having a bad day. I'm tired, I'm irritable. But you know what? My halo slipped today. So I'm going to straighten out tomorrow and move forward in my life. That for me is the conversation that people with a platform like us need to be having, so that we can make the road easier for those that follow us to say, it's okay that you drop the ball now and again. And that's, I think, sorry, Denise, the other, just before finishing my point, I think that will then allow people from other tribes to go, oh, okay, Denise isn't professing to be, to eat organically and to shine her halo and, drink only purified water from the, the streams of the Himalayas. No, she's a normal person that has a Coke now and again, whatever, as she drinks her organic water there.
Actually, no, there's just so much in there. Oh man, and I lost that one train of thought that I was like, oh wow, I want to add to that. It'll come back anyway.
It's okay. I'm going to have you pause for a second. You can think about it and try and figure out what you're saying. And I'm going to give them the first CEU code. So the first CEU code, for those of you that want CEUs, is FTSA-0213. And for those of you who do want CEUs, again, that link can be found by going to the Lemonade Conference website, which is just thelemonadeconference.com/CEU. You'll click on the big yellow button. You'll find the talk that says Melissa Breau and the future of R+ training. You'll click on that and then you'll input the first code and we'll have a second code for you in just a little bit. Give you a chance to remember your thought.
It came to me.
Okay, go for it.
I think it's time for positive reinforcement trainers to start owning our errors of the past. And I'm going to give you an example. That's a big one. Ignore bad behavior. This was a mainstay of training dogs in positive reinforcement training 20 years ago. We assumed that we controlled all reinforcement, that dogs, everything they did was because we were 100% responsible. If you turn your back and ignore it, the dog won't fill in the blanks. And we left out this huge category of reinforcers that we don't control, that dogs are reinforced by the environment, by the behaviors that, yeah, go ahead and ignore the barking while the dog barks gleefully as the leaves fall from the trees. And I think that is an area that, I don't know what that's about. We need to own that error, because to this day, the number of people who still believe that, and I hate to say it, but trainers are still saying that. If we don't own our errors, we can't move forward and say, yeah, okay, we thought that was the right answer. It's still the right answer in some circumstances, but in a whole lot of circumstances, it is not the right answer. We need to look through our history, identify these points. The whole positive is not permissive is a Susan Garrett phrase, is where I know it from. I don't know where it came from originally. The idea is that you do structure the environment. You don't allow a free-for-all. Within the positive reinforcement community, we say, yeah, positive is not permissive, but we need to understand that that came from somewhere. And it came from the place in the past where positive was permissive, because we didn't know what to do if we couldn't say no. We've come so far. We've learned so much about management, redirection, alternative behaviors. We are much better trainers. But if we don't openly acknowledge that side of our training and come down on it and say, no, these are not the answers we're giving anymore. Let's get some context. It's not black and white. Let's put some parameters about what do you do when the bad behavior is happening right now? And which ones can you safely ignore? Because frankly, if the dog can't if you lock the dog door and the dog can't go at it anymore, you solve the problem. Extinction will take place. But if the dog can self-reinforce, or there's more going on, and this is an area a little bit that I really think we would do ourselves some favors if we would just address it head on, because just saying I was wrong, this is my new me, and don't look for the, Kamal said, we always look, and we do this too. We look at the balance trainers who, somebody broke a dog's pelvis recently. I'm sorry, that's not a dog trainer. That's an animal abuser. And nobody who's rational or logical would say that's training, right? That's unkind for us to do that. It's equally unkind for people to say that somebody who walks around babying their little fur child and giving it everything it wants and following it around, it's equally wrong to hold that up as an example of positive. It's wrong. So identifying our errors, taking ownership, substituting the new information that we want to be representing us, and really coming down on trainers who hit the extremes, regardless of where they sit today. If you're a balance trainer and your balance training friends are making fun of the worst of force-free, speak up. And if you're a force-free trainer and your friends are calling all balance trainers animal abusers, speak up. Because when we don't, that becomes part of the culture.
Yep. Can I just say something?
Absolutely.
I do agree with what Denise was saying about the just ignore behavior, but I wonder actually if that was a mistake of communication, when the understanding of positive reinforcement training was being spread, because it's easy just to say that, but it's, at least it seems obvious to everyone now, or to to us now, that doesn't mean allowing an animal, because this came from training other animals. So I don't think that is what happened. I think that's what was said, and people just ran with it, because it's much easier to just say that, and and people like that idea, especially if you don't understand about training. So I wonder if it's a matter of communicating, or of actually explaining to people what training really is, what it involves, the whole thing. And just based on what Kamal was saying about the whole culture thing, we do have like positive-based training. Oh, lights went on. Positive-based training and balance, or compulsive, or all those things. But anyways, the whole idea of training a dog, maybe not for you so much, but for us down here, it's become more popular, just like positive-based training has become more popular. And the idea of that you can train a dog and through training control a dog. Doesn't matter if it's whatever methodology you're using. The idea of controlling a dog through training, maybe that's one message that actually messes things up because it justifies bad, punitive training, and it actually brings the idea to people, and I'm talking about general public, that you can do anything, or you can expect to be able to do anything to any dog or to get anything from any dog. And then someone is going to convince you that through positive training or through punishment. But that idea that anything can be done or that you can train anything, I think that is a message that actually confuses the whole middle field, gets, and just as an example, now a little bit off of that, about the cultural thing and about understanding that, there's things that you don't actually need to train that are just the way dogs are. You can actually get training, but, and it also has to do about expectations, like you don't expect much because they're dogs. There's an American trainer that once came here and she was like quite surprised because how you have garbage day and you put the garbage outside the house. And in places where you have roaming dogs that live out in the street, what dogs do is they scavenge, so they just rip the garbage. So what do people do? They don't think about training. They don't think about killing the dogs. They just raised, like you can go anywhere in Brazil. All the garbage bins are raised because they just like, yeah, these are dogs. That's what dogs do. Like, will I go through the training, or like, we're not expecting the city to, catch all these dogs, and no, like it's what dogs are, this is what they do. And I think that finding that balance, that yes, we can train, we can, get a lot from our dogs, but if we don't actually have realistic expectations, we actually are building unrealistic and often pretty bad expectations. And then that hurts dogs in both ways, hurts especially positive-based training, because it involves more people and the training.
I actually like that.
Sorry, go on, you go, Denise.
Oh, the thing that's coming to my mind is most people don't want to spend a ton of time in formal training. And if all you have to do is add a lock to your garbage can, that just makes a lot more sense. What do you when you have children, when you have small children? You put child locks on things. You don't make a big fuss about it. And then the kid gets a little older and it starts being a non-issue. After 6 months with a lock on your garbage can, you take it off. The dog has forgotten about it. It's a non-issue. I'm a huge fan of management over areas I just don't want to put in the time and energy. And it's almost like common sense. Like we have raccoons where you have wild dogs, right? So I'm not going to go out and poison all the raccoons because they open my garbage can. We just use the kind that they can't get into, and nobody even has a thought about it. It's simple. Go simple.
Do you know the interesting thing is you said that? I was like, do you know what would happen over here if somebody's dog did that? They would be slapped with the dog control order, and it would be a problem. So the dog would be, the owner would be spoken to. They'd have to commit to some sort of training. And you go, it's that simplicity of going, we've got and again, it's cultural. Your culture dictates, look, it's street dogs. We have street dogs. That's what our society has. It's not a big drama. We're going to always have the street dogs. We're always going to have dustbins. Let's come up with a solution. And it's that mindset of going, and again, I think it's cultural. Western society, definitely, like the UK and America, we have that Disney-esque mentality shoved in our head, which is what every dog is held to Lassie. And I was saying, earlier in the conversation, and I wrote a blog entitled, I hate to break the news to you, but Lassie was a boy. It's that fallacy that Lassie was the beacon with which all other dogs are expected to adhere to, but yet Lassie wasn't even real. It was 5 male rough collies. The other thing which I thought was so really articulate of it and really astute of you to pick up on was, I do believe that, again, like you were saying, a lot of the issues, like it was salacious marketing. It was the thing to hook people in and go, hey, this positive stuff, just ignore the bad stuff. It was the way to grip people's attention and say to them, and it was, I think, a lack of understanding of the application of the method. And what is reinforcement? Reinforcement goes beyond the cookie and the ball in your hand. There is, everything can be reinforcement. So I think it was salacious marketing that caused people to make these, and it still happens. I mean, if you can make a grand statement, I'm going to release a 10-second clip about how to teach your dog to do healing in 15 minutes, and your dog's going to heal like a champion. We all know that's BS. It's absolute BS. There is no way, I don't care how good a dog trainer you are, you can achieve that. It takes hard work. There's nothing sexy about saying, hey, I can solve your problem. It's going to take you 6 to 12 months and you're going to have to work your ass off. You're going to have to train at least nobody's going to subscribe to that online course.
Or you can lock the garbage can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's just lock the garbage can. Right?
Here's how to lock the garbage can in 3 easy steps. Give me your money. No, that isn't going to work out great. So I think what happens is they create these grand statements about what positive training can do, or what e-collar cone training can do, or what it's all dog training is dog training. And as long as, again, it comes back to put down your spears and have and be truthful and transparent. And as I said, I think for me, where we as a culture need to go is being more transparent and candid about the ebbs and flows of dog ownership. That, I get frustrated like everybody else when I can't come up with a solution. The difference is my go-to tools are in a certain spectrum. So I'm going to go, okay, can I manipulate the environment? Can I increase the reinforcement? Have I reinforced enough? Have I lumped? Those are my go-to. My go-to is the damn dog. What's he doing? He's messing me around. Let me find a way to punish him, because I take responsibility for my role in the dog's learning. And for me, if the question originally, my journey into positive training, I have to say it wasn't because if I'm being truthful, when I was a balanced dog trainer, I genuinely didn't think I had a bad relationship with my dog. I wasn't going, there's a problem in relationship, I need to fix it, because I was blissfully ignorant. I just went, this is interesting. This approach is interesting. And it was more, I was intrigued about doing things differently, and as a result of it, better. My argument for reinforcement-based dog training is that it was like my dogs of old were watching black and white television, and now they're watching HD color surround sound. And there is a pro and a con of that, in that my dogs are aware of every nuance of information. And if my information is even a split second off what it should be, they're going to let me know. But that's the difference. They're going to let me know. They're not going to just shut up and sit there and speak and seen and not be heard, so to speak. They're going to let me know very clearly that I effed up. And unless I change my behavior, they're going to keep doing the same old stuff. So as I said, I don't know about you, Denise, but I didn't look at the time and go, oh, my dogs hate me, or I actually think I had a good relationship with them. And I would still say I had a good relationship with them. I think that my relationship had... Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if I like what you said about the TV and watching black and white and then the HD. Do you think that you also see your dogs differently? Did you see them black and white, and today you see much more of them because of the change in training?
The difference, I'd say, I don't think I had a bad relationship with my dogs, but I think that a bit similar to path to Denise, I would say, if I'm being truthful, my dogs always knew that Dr. Jackal was always there, or whichever way it was, Jekyll and Hyde, that was always, there was always that person around. And if I gave you the look, they knew. And I would say where that really manifested itself was in competition. So where my dogs really showed me the fallout of using aversives or compulsion, not aversives, compulsion or balance, whatever you want to call it, was in competition. So when I would put my game face on, they would underperform, because the game face looked like, I'm going to sort you out, da da da. So where my body language, my posture, my demeanor, they read that as, oh, Mr. Jackal or Dr. Jackal, whichever way around it has turned up, and I'm going to be stressed and I'm going to be anxious and I can't perform. In terms of my relationship with my dogs is, I can literally see what that dog is thinking. I can see what is in that dog's mind. And I'd say not even I can literally see their behavior. I can read the signals. I can make choices whether I'm going to choose to acknowledge it and respond or ignore it and move forward. So, again, off topic, but on topic, like I can see that my dog is frustrated and confused and stressed. Now, and depending on this question I'm asking, I can say to the dog in full conscience, I can say, I see what you're telling me. I'm going to change my path. I see what you're saying to me, and I'm not going to change my path. But I do it from I'm fully informed, I suppose, is the thing. And I'm not saying that if my dog's a bit stressed about something, controversially, I'm not going to say, oh, I know you don't want to sit because you're stressed about that dog, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to still ask you to sit, and then I'm going to reward you profusely with reinforcement. But before, I probably wouldn't have. I wouldn't have cared. It wouldn't have been in my forethought. It wouldn't have been the first thinking, if that makes sense. So that's the difference now. And that could have been an experience. That could have been the methodology. That could have been a lot of things. But now, I agree. Yeah, I would say that's definitely the case. They see it in HD sound surround, and so do I, which is a blessing and a curse, to be truthful.
Yeah. Denise, you had something you wanted to say before. Do you still have it in your head?
Oh, I'm sure. I get wrapped up. The problem is I start listening, and then I just kind of move into this new area. And I was thinking when I'm training formally, I'm in a different mental place than I am living with my dogs in my house. So when I'm training formally, everything is just 100% riveted on this relationship and this thing we're doing. It does not occur to me. It truly just doesn't occur to me to bring punishment into the picture. It's just those days are gone. And it would actually take an effort for me to think about like if somebody said, well, how would you handle this? I would not only would I be taken aback, but not because I'd be offended, because I would just be like, I would have to figure it out. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. My relationship in the house is much more, I don't want to say honest, but it's kind of true. The other 23 and a half hours a day, there's a lot of give and take. It's like, you just need to stop doing that, right? And so there's just a lot more fluidness. We're all trying to get along. We're all trying to live together. So it's a more relaxed type of relationship. But I do differentiate my working relationship with my dog, which is so much about the dog, from just getting through the day, which is different than when I go out with the dogs for a walk, which is just sort of, it's truly their time. I try not to train very much when I'm out on my doggy walk. I want my dogs to be a dog. I really do. I want them to go do dog things. And then I'll go watch them do dog things. And then I'm like a parent of a toddler whose toddler's super cute, right? Because I really enjoy watching my dogs just be dogs, And so those are all a little bit different, I think. We all get like the give a little, get a little. When we're out on the walks, I give a lot. Where do you want to go? How do you want to go there? I really make it their time. In training, I want what I want, but I'm going to make it as worth your while as I possibly can. And in the house, we're all just going to have to give a little, and we're all going to get a little, and hopefully we end up happy enough. Everybody's happy enough.
So let me go ahead and stick in the second CEU quiz, and we're down to about 8 minutes. And I know that we kind of want to get to that last question on our list. So we'll dive in there after the code. So the second CEU code, guys, is lemonade-0312. And again, to access that, you're going to go to the Lemonade Conference website /CEU. You're going to look for the chat, Melissa Breau, the future of Art Plus training. And then you can go ahead and put in the 2 codes. And I will stick them back in the chat box. All right. So the big question that I know we wanted to make sure we got to is really, how would you like to see the industry continue to evolve kind of from where it is right now and the state of the world? Anybody want to start? I know you all have thoughts on this because we talked about it in advance. So,
I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I want us to stop thinking so much about training and start thinking about getting along across the board. And Dante gave some wonderful examples, and Kamal, how can we make this thing, working with another species, maximally workable for all parties? How can we take the most from the fact that we live with another species in a way that gets everyone's needs met? And I think when you think in terms of harmony, your mindset is quite different than when you think like, so the tradition in the United States is, I give a command, one command, you do it. And that is a selling point, as Kamal pointed out. That's a marketing tactic. Do you want your dog to come the first time you call? Do you want your dog to sit when you tell it? Look, nobody else in my family does a damn thing the first time I ask. Why would the dogs? Like, I'm dinner time, 5 minutes later, dinner time. Like this jump, this military model, which is where these things come from, that puts you in a frame of mind. You start thinking, yeah, I want my kids to jump when I say, come to dinner, right? But then you stop and you think about that and you say, no, maybe maybe that's not important to me. Maybe that's not necessary. I understand we do it for the dog shows, and that's all different. That's all tricks, you know. I'd love to see us focus on harmony, focus on getting along. And I think if we could do that effectively, training would naturally follow in a kinder way, because getting along in harmony assumes that everybody's best interest is being served. I think that would help us very much.
Dante, Kamal, one of you have thoughts you want to pick up from there?
Okay, you go first.
I think that, moving on, like moving ahead from now, at least from my point of view, I always think about, like how dog training, positive dog training is perceived by the general public, and then positive dog training within the trainers and the training world. I think that thinking about people in general and how people see dog training and understand it, I believe that we have to make sure that we do understand, all the science and all the whys and how things work, but also understand that there is people and relationship behind all of that, and that I think will make the idea of dog training and positive dog training more digestible to most people that are not aware. Thinking about trainers and how we think about training and how far or where I would like positive training to go. Of course, I just want more people to know more about what you can do with positive reinforcement. And what I want to see more is what I try to do. I already do what I want to happen more. And basically is, as Denise was saying, I'm actually, I'm proud of being able to, transit from different groups and talk to people from different spectrums of dog training, like the people that use more, whatever, all different kinds of methods of training. Because I'm really careful not to judge, but I'm also, working hard for like how many, whatever years, to just share and be able to show people, because a lot of us, you just need to see that things actually work. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that it worked very much in the beginning in agility, because people actually came to ask me, how did you do this? How did you do that? I had a Scottish Terrier. I had never really trained a dog in agility, and the dog was actually running and doing all these things and really working excited. So and then I realized, all people need, at least in this group of people, what they need is they need to see things working, and you need to be open to tell them how this works and not tell them that they're wrong. Like, this is how I do it. It works for me. I'm sure it can work for you, as long as, if you're open to it. I'm here to share with you all this information. So I would like more people to do that, but that's what I do, and I will keep doing. And yeah.
Dante? Or I'm sorry, Kamal?
So my feeling about how moving forward is several. I think Denise and Dante have made excellent points. I think that, as I said earlier, about people with the platform being more transparent about the realities of raising a dog, owning a dog, training a dog, using reinforcement-based methodologies, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that people have a fuller picture and they understand and they feel better equipped to deal with those situations. From terms of the methodology, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface in terms of actual methods, shaping behavior, teaching. If like now we were just, Denise mentioned about concepts, teaching concepts of learning rather than teaching behavior. I think that's like literally, I've been playing around with that notion. So I don't teach behavior, I teach concepts, and then it makes everything else so more salient to the dog. I think that's a huge thing that's going to be really, really prominent in specifically in reinforcement-based dog training. I think that obviously, there's lots of people that are really prominent in numerous dog sports that use reinforcement-based methods and be successful. I think that there is still a lot more to be learned and done about the application of reinforcement based on positive reinforcement based dog training for longer duration chains like Mondio. I think is, you know, a 45-minute test is enough, is a standard that needs to be explored. And I also think that positive training in the domestic / pet world, I think whilst there is definitely that how to teach your cockapoo to come back when it's called and sitting down, I think that's very well documented, shown evidence. I think it's to deal with, well, this dog wants to bite something, this dog wants to chase something, this dog has got a major aggression problem. How can we deal with those issues under the realms of reinforcement-based dog training? I think that still needs to be and not with less management. I mean, obviously management is absolutely appropriate, but actually, for want of a better term, helping these dogs get over these issues, not just managing it, you know, which is definitely appropriate. But I would love it to be more prominent and shown of taking the dog that has aggression issues and using reinforcement-based methods to overcome that dog's fear, apprehension, phobia, without having to have this stringent, like, you know, war and peace documentation about management, because you go, that can impose stress on people. I would love to see that being more publicized and shared with the greater public, that that you can achieve, you know, that you can change that dog's character and personality without having to, you know, have it in a glass box and don't breathe this and hop on one leg and da 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 da. I think that's the next beacon of which I'd love to see more being done by people like ourselves and in our industry and beyond. For me, that's the big thing. But I think in terms of if we look at the trajectory of what's been achieved in, say, 20 years of reinforcement dog training, I mean, like, even from like the first version, if we talk about positive training 101, and I'd say Patty was probably, although I never knew her, I knew of her, I would say she was, her dog would do moments of brilliance, but it was largely inconsistent. And then the next version, and please, you know, I'm sure Denise would be better informed to comment, the next version got slightly better at that. And now I would say you can have dogs that are consistently, week in, week out, consistently giving like top level performances and being very competitive, trained with reinforcement-based methods. And I'd say that's the evolution. So if you think, well, in another 20 years, where could we possibly go? It's really inspiring, to be truthful.
Yeah. I have some questions about things like socialization.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what the best socialization paths are. I do know that I do not find it effective for my type of dog to have them sit looking at things. I feel like it sensitizes them rather than desensitizes them. So there's all these socialization things which are common knowledge right now that we use that I have real questions about. Exposure versus interaction, topics like that. How much do we need to get the dogs out? Should we even get close to these things? Should we avoid issues during the adolescent phase? I'd love to see exploration of that. Your discussion about concepts is a big one. I'm not against food or toys in training, but the way I do my loose leash walking requires neither. And what that ends up leaving me with is a really pleasant interaction with the dog, which is simply understanding based. The dog understands, oh, you don't want me to pull that way? Oh, this works better for both of us. I'd love to see that expanded in the pet dog world, because it is a problem for the average person to always have the food, always have the toy, stop what they're doing. So what other things can we teach our dogs that are more about just the relationship that people have with their dogs, especially after that initial training phase? Love to see exploration of these things as a worthwhile area for exploration, even if we get nowhere, right? So we can run down these paths and decide we wasted our time, and that's fine, but love that thinking, that way of thinking.
Definitely. Socialization. Oh, sorry, one. That's a big one. Sorry. Yeah.
You're good. You're good. So we're past time, but so I want to kind of round things out. I want to thank you all for coming. Denise, Kamal, Dante, thank you all for being on the panel today. It's been a fantastic discussion. There are tons of great comments in the chat box. Everybody's so glad that we did this. Huge thank you to the audience out there in internet land. We wouldn't be here if you weren't here to watch and join in the conversation. If you haven't joined us for the rest of the conference yet, tickets are still on sale and will remain available at least through the end of the conference this evening, maybe through tomorrow. We'll see. All the talks are recorded, so whatever you missed, you can go back, you can catch up on it. They'll be available for you to review. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of the conference. So hang tight,
Thank you.
panelists.
Thank you, Melissa, as well. You always do a great job.
Well, thank you. Hang tight just 1 second, and I'm going to go ahead and end our live stream. Let's make sure it's really ended before we keep talking.